So hey everyone, this is a quick look at the Shimano Ultegra R8070. So this is the Ultegra R8000 series, which has recently been released. So I put an order in a few weeks back. I actually wanted the shifters, so the STIs, the new rotors and the front and rear mech. Now unfortunately I've only got the front mech, the rear mech and also the rotors. There's a bit of a delay, or at least a waiting time as far as the hoods go, so the STIs, and I'll do a follow-up with those in a few months' time. Essentially, I think at least when I was inquiring about these, the order time, it said delivery December, so I just decided to park that because you know, I'm here in the UK. Come December, I'm not going to use this bike at all, at least outside anyway, so these hoods will do absolutely fine. So just back from a first ride, I've only done about 20 miles, just off work today. So quick look at the rotors. So you'll have seen this before, the bike was up on the same wall mount actually, but I'll do a bit of a side by side. These look completely different, both here as we're looking at them from this angle, but also as I'm actually riding the bike and looking down, completely different look. The other thing just to mention as well, I haven't changed the calipers, because as far as I can tell, at least on paper and also actually looking at pictures, they look exactly the same except they've got Ultegra on them. So I'm not going to bother with those either for the moment. The pads in there are less than a year old, probably the bike's maybe done, I don't know, 3,000 miles, maybe not even that much. So yeah, so I'm not going to bother changing those at the moment. So I'll start off with the rear mech. I think this looks absolutely stunning. To be fair, when the Dura-Race was released, I thought that looked absolutely amazing, but I just couldn't ever warrant spending that kind of money on a rear derailleur that effectively, yeah, it's probably a bit lighter, looks a little bit different. There's claims that it's more aero than the old design, but I just couldn't warrant spending, I don't know, whatever the price is, 400 or 500 quid on a rear derailleur when you know, I'm by no means pro level. So yeah, kind of popped that idea last year, and then when the Ultegra, the new Ultegra was released and there was pictures for it, I thought, yeah, okay, we'll go for that. So do a bit of a side by side for that in a moment, or you know, initial observations and feelings after that first 20 miles. This at the rear, it does feel a lot slicker. Now again, that could just be expert mechanic. Having said that, I'm pretty sure, I'm 99.9% sure it was the same guy who set up the last Ultegra rear mech as well. So I wouldn't say, I guess going from one to the other, that you're going to notice a massive amount of difference, but this does certainly feel crisper. It anybody who's used the di2 will know that it's hardly sluggish, but you know, skipping down the down or even up the rear cassette, it is now absolutely lightning quick. As far as I know, it's still running on the same shift speed, but I know there was a firmware update as well, which was mentioned in the mechanics note. So I think it looks good and it certainly works at least as well as, but in my opinion, a little bit crisper. And as I've already said, I really do like the design of this, and it certainly sits a lot better. It's difficult to tell kind of from this angle where you're looking at it straight on, but you know, once you're actually up on the bike, we'll try and get in here. You can see it's tucked away. We've got a couple of focus issues there, but yeah, it's really tucked right underneath the chainstay. This looks very, very similar to the one that was on the bike, at least as I'm looking at it here, rather than doing a side by side. The only point to note, and this is very specific to setting up these sort of oval rings, is the last front mech I needed the spacer in order to push that back, so I don't know whether there's a change in the cage design. Certainly aesthetically it looks very, very similar in terms of the cutout that we've got here, but I'll have a quick look in a minute and offer that up in terms of the actual cage width. I'll be surprised if there's a massive difference, because the last thing that Shimano want to go and do is change this dramatically and then I guess cock up the chain line, or even set up for anybody who's upgrading, or I guess more importantly any of the new bikes that are coming out. Okay, so there's a side by side of the old rotor there on the left, and then the new rotor. So do look completely different, both the same size, 160mm. I much prefer the new design. I don't think it's going to be to everybody's liking. That's certainly more of a traditional kind of rotor, I guess, but I think that looks a lot better, a lot less sort of mountain bikey, adventure bike type style, which I would, personally at first glance, that's what I would associate that type of rotor with, whereas that I think looks very kind of road orientated. I did do a couple of I guess steady long descents this morning, and the braking was absolutely fantastic. Is it any better? Based on those kind of descents, it's impossible for me to actually say yeah it's better, because most of the new design really is to actually improve the cooling, but I do like the look of them, and of course they are the new model, which was I guess one of the most important things to me. There was no way that Shimano were going to release something that was worse than this, so it's at least on par with, and I think in doing so, I don't know whether or not the mechanic who's fitted these has realigned the brakes in any way, but actually they do feel better, but I don't think that's down to the rotor at all. I think that's probably just a tune-up, but if he hasn't touched these in any way and he's just fitted the new rotor, then it's all in my head. Okay, so front mech, new one, old one. You see, design wise, very, very similar in terms of the pivot here. On the old one it's solid, there's a cutout on that one, but here at the top, guess where the electronics are? Almost identical. Almost identical. Size, the one on the left probably actually a little bit bulky, so they have done a bit of a redesign with it. The internals, they look identical to me. Slight change maybe in the materials, some of the bolt heads, but yeah, they look identical. There's actually also a bit more of a cutout here as well. So where's that on the mount? So maybe shaving a couple of grams, unnecessary amount of material, not sure, but yeah, they look, I would say, pretty much the same. Let's just have a quick look on the outside. So that cutout, redesigned, cage width, the same. In fact, the new one actually has more. If you can see here, has just there on that fin, there is more of an angle on that, whereas you see the old one practically flat. So that potentially is what's making the shifting feel a little bit snappier. So this one's going to be quite challenging to get as a side by side, simply because this one's obviously all pulled together. There's no tension in it from the chain, or even in terms of its position as to where it should be from shifting. But I dare say if you put these side by side, this one's going to appear much bigger. I mean, that's a complete redesign. See from the internals, so if we can get in there, yeah, that's a complete redesign. There's obviously this extra kind of piece here as far as the hanger, so I guess this here is what would be the equivalent to the silver ring there that you can see at the top. So there's an extra piece which is obviously making the rear derailleur sit lower and also back, whereas this previously would have been here. So I would imagine in doing so, and you can find this in the Shimano bump, but it's actually decreasing the angle here. You see that angle is much smoother. You could probably do with looking, no, it's a completely different rear mech, where if you look here, so this is actually a 105 mechanical, but you can see in terms of the chain angle, if we can get in terms of the chain angle, see as it comes down from the rear cassette down into that initial jockey wheel, there's quite a tight angle there. And we're actually in a very similar gear position as well on that rear cassette compared to this, so that's much smoother. It's far less tight than it would have been on this, and certainly on the mechanical. So the design from that point of view makes sense, and again, that's potentially what's making those gear shifts feel a little bit smoother and a little bit snappier, because ultimately there's I guess less friction in here. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Any comments or questions, drop them in the section below. I will do my very best to answer them. If it's anything too technical, I'm probably going to refer to a Shimano website or press release or something, and then either drop you the link so you can read it yourself, or maybe even make out that I know these things and actually reply like I've actually got a clue. So please like and subscribe. I will put together a follow-up video after I've done, I guess, a few more miles, and then I can probably be, well, in fact I will certainly be more objective than I can at the moment, having only done 20 miles. So I'll probably get up to, I don't know, 200-300, put another video together, and yeah, then as we get into the thousands. But so far, very happy.